No sense being coy with the intro, you already know what this video is going to be about. So for once in this channel's history, how about I just say my ultimate opinion right out of the gate? I like the Mechanicus a lot. Are there some grievances I have with them? Yeah, of course, but one of the things I like most about 40k is the setting. And unlike many things in Warhammer, they aren't directly ripping too many things off. Sure, there's the hatred of AI that's pretty likely inspired by Dune, like much of 40k is, but if the idea of not trusting computers is enough to say they're a ripoff, then I'm sorry to tell you this, but your grandparents are also probably ripping off of Dune. Their mannerisms and attitudes are, from what I can tell, not only fairly original, but something that embodies not only humanity in the setting, but also 40k as a whole very well. Very grim, very dark, and most of all, very weird. But how about instead of just going on about how I like them right away, I get into their history a bit more. Let's get past my own bias just a little bit and see if the Cogboys aren't the army for you. And even if they're not, you get to listen to the Mechanicus soundtrack for this video. That's always a good time. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you something. Do you want to cook and eat delicious, nutritious food, but sometimes you just don't have the time to make it? If you're anything like roughly 100% of the people I know in my life, the answer to that is yes. In which case, you'd best listen up, because this video was sponsored by HelloFresh. Fall is a busy time of year, there's no doubt about it. Between Halloween and Thanksgiving, you've got two major holidays back to back, and if you're a student, the finals are just around the corner. Well, then it's a good thing that with HelloFresh recipes, they're ready to go in 30 minutes or less. With whatever's going on in your life, be it holiday shopping and preparation, or a mad dash to get all your classes in order for finals, it's quick as can be to get yourself a HelloFresh meal cooked right up. They've even got step-by-step instructions, which is something I cannot emphasize enough. I'll level with you here, I'm the kind of guy who could set cereal on fire. I'm not the best cook. And even if you're like me in the cooking department, you'll have no problem figuring out making one of HelloFresh's delicious recipes. You know what else HelloFresh makes easy for you? Eating healthy, that's what. Aside from the fact that they're all good food, regardless of what item you order, there's options ranging from vegetarian, pescatarian, as well as fit and wholesome meals to make sure you're on track to hit your goals. You can even customize your meals as well, which aside from being super convenient, means you can achieve peak fitness with exactly the kind of food you want. Add protein to a vegetarian meal, you absolute mad lad. HelloFresh supports it every step of the way. And before you start thinking something insane like HelloFresh being just for dinners, it's not. Everything from breakfast to snacks to even dessert can be planned out for you, and you don't even have to look at a grocery store anytime in the process. Your entire day's eating can be taken care of with HelloFresh. If that's not convenient, I don't know what is. Before I go raid my fridge, because this sponsorship has made me hungry, if you click on the handy link located in both the pinned comment and description of this video, as well as use the code POGPancreasNoV70, you get not only 70% off your first order, but free shipping as well. I'm bad at math, and even I know this is an absolute steal. Start eating better and easier with HelloFresh today. Now then, let's get technical. Get it? See what I did there? Alright, fine, I'll get on with the video. To understand the Mechanicus, we must first go back in time. Many millennia before the year 40,000, the future God Emperor of mankind locked a dragon inside of Mars. Moving on from that surely unimportant plot point, during humanity's golden age, now known as the Dark Age of Technology, mankind had not only colonized Mars, but terraformed it as well, like in pretty much every science fiction story. Then things went radically wrong, starting when the Men of Iron AI servants mankind had rebelled, and Mars went back to being an irradiated shithole. All that was habitable on Mars were underground facilities and airtight domes. Starvation and other problems rapidly set in, and it was up to whatever technicians that survived to keep Mars from becoming completely uninhabitable. Over time, Martian culture changed because of all of this. Technology became an object of worship, and those with the know-how to work it became its priests. This religion also manifested the belief of an all-knowing god of technology, creatively known as the Machine God. He likes order, technology, and replacing your genitals with USB ports and or sticks. Eventually, the God Emperor came a-knockin', and he was worshipped as an aspect of the Machine God that was known as the Omnissiah. The Omnissiah is also sometimes just what they call him, the Machine God, and sometimes he's something else entirely. And also a lot of the tech priests don't actually believe the Emperor is the Omnissiah, but just roll with it to avoid any problems. This vagueness of what their belief truly is something that you'll soon see as a running theme with the Mechanicus. Or should I say Mechanicum, because they weren't the Mechanicus quite yet, but I'll get to that later. For now, its influence spread across mankind with the Great Crusade, and as the Emperor's realm spread, so too did the Mechanicums. Knowing that he needed the tech priests to help run his empire, he gave them a special exemption from the no-religion rule that he created. This kept them happy enough, and they gave him the industry that he needed. Then the Horus Heresy broke out, and half the Mechanicum turned to chaos alongside the Space Marine legions and the army. Mars was actually the center of a civil war that had fighting almost as fierce as it was on Terra when Horus invaded it. But unfortunately, that didn't really involve any Primarchs, so it obviously only deserved 1/20th of the attention Terra got. Daddy issues are clearly more interesting than science fiction robot priests duking it out on a Mad Max planet. After the Horus Heresy and eventual disappearance of all the Primarchs, two important things regarding the Mechanicum happened. One, they ate all of the other scientific organizations in the Imperium. There were a few kicking around beforehand, though of course not as influential as the Mechanicum, and they were swiftly absorbed into it and made to follow its doctrines. 2. It became the Adeptus Mechanicus we know and love today. It did so for reasons largely bureaucratic in nature. As the Mechanicum, it was technically a client empire of the Imperium as a whole, but with the imperial governance growing larger and larger and the ecclesiarchate gaining more and more power as worship of the Emperor exploded across humanity, they wanted a way to put them on a more level playing field with the rest of the Imperium's organizations, and as technical outsiders they wouldn't be able to do nearly what they could do as an official Adeptus organization. The Mechanicum also faced a bit of a loyalty conundrum while operating under this system. The various vassals the Mechanicum itself had weren't sure if they were supposed to be loyal to the Mechanicum directly or the larger Imperium first. Becoming an official Adeptus organization resolved both issues. Now they were a part of the Imperium of Man officially, so no need to worry about loyalty problems or other politicians doing some fuckery that they couldn't deal with due to their technical status as foreigners. Between this meaning that other imperial politicians in turn had more direct say in Mechanicus affairs, and the Mechanicum ambassador marching a Titan into the Imperial Senate chambers to help negotiations proceed, the rest of the Imperial Senate was quick to go along with this as well. We finally have the Adeptus Mechanicus proper as it would come to be known. Also, holy shit, how big is the Imperial Senate that you can fit a Titan in their meeting room? As for the rest of their history, the Mechanicus has one simple, overarching goal: to find and understand technology that has been lost to humanity. And boy, is there a lot of it to find. Humanity's scientific prowess was both incredible and widespread across the galaxy, so the Mechanicus regularly sends fleets across space to find what mankind has lost. They also preserve what remains and make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Sometimes this means defending a forge world from chaos or orcs until their dying breath. Sometimes this means skimping out and giving a guard regiment the equipment they need because you're a greedy bastard, and safeguarding ancient relics is a good excuse to have. Inventing new stuff is not really officially supported, but that just means you have to get creative with it. No, Mr. Fabricator General, I didn't invent this piece of technology. I found it in this laboratory. Pay no attention to the fact that it's a lab that I just built. I can assure you this is ancient technology. Granted, if you're that blatant with it, you're probably going to get lobotomized, but it's that kind of thing individual tech priests do to avoid getting in trouble. And some of the higher-ups are willing to allow this to different degrees as long as you're creative with your justifications, or just throw it in a dirt pile for a couple months so it looks really old, you know, whatever works. Creating AI is something that's usually never allowed, though. That doesn't stop some tech priests from still getting away with it. But usually that gets you insta-killed if you're found out. Humanity already had one AI rebellion in this setting, no one wants another one. They're the only people around in the Imperium if you want pretty much anything made. From weapons of war to more mundane things like transportation, the Mechanicus builds it all. They don't have a monopoly on technology, they have a monopoly on pretty much everything. For example, maybe they'll subcontract out the shipping to someone else, but the Mechanicus is the one who builds the truck the shipping company uses. If they don't do that, they make the parts that the company who builds the truck uses, or they maintain the merchant vessels that ship the materials to the planet of whoever makes the part. This gives them not only massive sway in imperial politics, but it means that their worlds can survive on their own if cut off from the Imperium at large for at least some amount of time. It also means that people like Inquisitors and Commissars have to be a lot more careful when dealing with the Mechanicus. If you accuse a Loco Magos of being a heretic, there's pretty decent odds that the nearest Imperial Guard regiment is going to be losing out on a few shipments of weapons if you were a bit too eager in your accusation. They're not withholding equipment from you, it's just production errors, they'll likely tell you. It can't be helped. For this reason, the Mechanicus is largely independent and polices itself. Sure, Inquisitors will still get involved, but they've got to be a lot more polite about it than with other organizations. The rest of their lore can be integrated into their pros and cons, so how about I just start with that now? Like I said at the very beginning, the Mechanicus are very unique as far as 40k goes. I love my Eldar, but being honest, they're just elves in space. Sure, there's a lot of things that make them stand out, but at the end of the day, they're a race of aliens that are thin and lanky, have pointy ears, and do magic real good. Not hard to see where the inspiration for them comes from. Tech priests, meanwhile, are pretty unique, with their worship of technology and almost fetishistic level with which they tear their own organs out to replace with RGB gaming keyboards and water coolers. So if you want your army to stand out, you can't go wrong with the Mechanicus. They've also got some of the best technology in the setting by far. In terms of who's got better tech than them, only the Necrons completely outclass them. Technically, the Leagues of Votann do now as well, but something to take note of is that both the Votann and the Mechanicus both draw from the same source, that being equipment from the Dark Age of technology. Sure, the Votann have much more widespread access to it, but the Mechanicus doubtlessly have some of their own equivalents stored away somewhere. The Tau might have better stuff for the average person, but the higher-end Mechanicus stuff would blow away a Tau equivalent. Eldar tech is hard to compare because it's more magic than tech, but the Mechanicus can to some extent replicate what the Eldar can do. That being said, the Eldar do generally outclass the Mechanicus still. What? It may be the Mechanicus video, but I'm an Eldar fanboy. What do you want from me? Something I really appreciate about the Mechanicus as well is that they really showcase just how bizarre and downright awful humanity in this setting is. People tend to forget that in 40k, mankind is supposed to be no better than anyone else, including GW itself when they put out artwork that makes Gilman look like Jesus. The Adeptus Mechanicus, though? Just look at Call. Can you even call him human anymore? And while I might be drawing a bit for this point from what I saw in a Mandalore gaming video, look at the Mechanicus ship from the Deathwing video game. It's powered in part by a human being strapped to an engine that's also got two other human beings connected to it. And somehow I doubt they're feeling very good about their position in life right about now. They don't give a damn about their workers, and they regularly mess with the emotional centers of their brain to be quote-unquote more logical. Their mindset is so detached from not only our own morals, but that of other Imperials that they're in many ways just as alien as an Eldar or a Necron, sometimes more so. They rapidly throw away their humanity to become one with technology. They regularly lobotomize people because it makes for slightly more efficient workforces, and if there's even the chance of finding some archaeotech from the Golden Age, they don't care how many people they gotta kill to get it. If you want a reminder that in 40k, humanity is strange and very much not the good guys of the setting, then the Mechanicus are perfect for you. With that being said, you can fluff your Cogboy army to be as good as 40k morals allow. Tech priests can be motivated by genuinely altruistic desires, namely that of rebuilding mankind's technological and industrial base to what it once was. It's still Warhammer, and tech priests regularly screw each other with politicking if it suits them, to say nothing of how they treat other Imperials that don't have a gaming laptop jammed into their brain, but that just means that your army can be as good or evil as you want it to be. Again, you know, by 40k standards. To go a bit more into their dogma, you also have a huge amount of wiggle room for how exactly you want your Mechanicus army to view technology itself. They worship it and believe it to be divine, that much is set in stone, but even within canon itself, the specifics are often vague and left open to interpretation. For example, machine spirits. These are what the Imperium calls AI, and they're in pretty much every piece of technology. Of course, are machine spirits actual artificial intelligence with sapience and personalities and such? Or are they merely the fragmented and corrupted remains of AI? Or are they not even real, and the procedures that please them are just the normal maintenance protocols we would have in the real world to do something like change your car's oil or run an antivirus software, just with incense being added at every step? Or are machine spirits actual spirits who demand proper praise and adoration? Otherwise, your gun is going to misfire at the worst possible moment, and your Baneblade is going to go berserk because you didn't rub its joystick in just the way it likes it. Each of these possibilities are equally fair game for building your army, and all have their own appeals for how you want to view the 40k universe. Likewise, you can have an army run by Maguses that fully believe the Emperor is an aspect of the machine god, or ones that deny such things and only go along with it to avoid the Imperium's wrath. All of these and more are all possible options for how you want to homebrew your Mechanicus army. They also have diverse mentalities and beliefs, to a point which I will get into in the con section. The video game Mechanicus is a perfect showcase of this. One tech priest is fanatical about following the Mechanicus' creeds, believing that alien technology truly is evil and that the Necron should be destroyed entirely. Another is fanatical in the complete opposite direction. He thinks that Necron tech should be studied and replicated at all costs to advance humanity and the Mechanicus' power. Both of them are at different times shown to be in the right and the wrong, so fluffing your army in either direction or somewhere in the middle is perfectly valid either way. Another positive to take note of is the survivability of the Mechanicus. Without the tech priests, the Imperium cannot survive. It would lose access to pretty much all of its material resources beyond manpower, and when you take away guns from the Imperial Guard, you take away its usefulness. Throwing countless bodies at the Tyranids without giving them guns is a great way to feed a hive fleet. The Imperial Navy would waste away into nothingness, and even the Space Marines would find it hard to keep their stuff going. Except for the Salamanders, I guess, but that's one chapter that would have no problem surviving out of 1,000. The Mechanicus, meanwhile, might be able to survive independently. For the most part, they probably wouldn't be able to call upon the Guard and Marines to aid them in battle anymore, but they can make all the fancy toys and whatnot to keep themselves safe for at least some amount of time. They're also numerically strong enough to endure some pretty severe losses while being tough enough to be able to rely upon more than just numbers in a fight. So if you want a faction that's in zero danger of dying out, you want the Mechanicus. This also gives them a lot of sway within the Imperium itself, as I've mentioned before. No one wants to piss them off any more than necessary, because without them, you're not getting any weapons. This gives them a huge amount of leeway that no one else really has, not even the head priests of the Imperium. When you can take your ball and go home at any point you want, people will put up with your bullshit a bit longer than usual. Their models are also gorgeous. They're a newer addition as far as standalone armies go, so this does make sense. They not only look good, but distinct on the tabletop. And once again, they really drive home that feeling that humanity in 40k is fundamentally screwed up beyond belief. Look at this model and tell me a morally stable society would ever allow this thing to be created, let alone that this would be considered an ideal state of being for a human. But I digress. Their models are good, and that's really all I have to say on the matter for now. There's another loaded statement for you to ponder over for the next few minutes. Oh, one last thing, they're also all plastic. That benefit alone makes them worth collecting more than some other armies. No resin for you if you go with the mech heads, hell yeah. Now, time for tabletop positive. positives. First off, the Mechanicus are very mobile. Most of their army has either an 8-inch or 12-inch movement, which makes sense when you think about how they cut off their legs and replace it with motor-driven pistons. There's not a single Skitarii who's got to slow down because he's got a cramp in his leg, and that's not even counting all the units with the fly keyword that'll just zoom around the battlefield at will. They're also incredibly flexible as an army. I'd say they lean a bit more towards the shooty end of things than the stabby end, but you can always surprise your enemy by tossing some Sicarians at them, or Fulgurite Electro Priests. Aside from that name being awesome, they hit pretty damn hard in melee. Of course, ranged is still their strong suit, and while they only deal 1 damage a pop, at strength 4 and hitting on 3-ups, your basic Skitarii Ranger is going to be hitting more often than not, as well as pretty reliably wounding anything weaker than a Space Marine. If you want to lean into the monster side of things, throw Castellan robots into the fray. They aren't as tough as some other enemy monstrous units, but they're certainly tougher than most basic infantry. Combine that with the fact that they can fire in melee combat now due to being monstrous units, and they can really put the hurt on while tanking a reasonable amount of damage in return. Plus, if you roll a 6, they explode when they go down, so that can always be a nice final middle finger to whoever took them out. Canticles and Doctrina Imperatives both help out in this department as well as being just some plain old nifty buffs. Canticles affect pretty much every unit that is in a Skitarii, while Doctrina Imperatives only help Skitarii. Each can only be used for a single battle round, but they go into effect instantly even if the opponent is going first, which both helps the flexibility of the Mechanicus as well as allows for some surprise tricks that can throw the opponent's game plan off kilter. Canticles just give straight up buffs, while the Imperatives also give a debuff to counteract the buff, but to be honest with you, the debuff really isn't worth worrying about in most instances. For instance, the Bulwark Imperative makes a unit move 3 inches slower, but buffs their armor save by 1. If they're already in a position to be opening fire though, odds are decent that you don't need to be moving them that much, so from my point of view, this is pretty much just a buff. Or the one that improves a unit's ability to hit in melee while debuffing their ability to hit a ranged attack. I don't think the flying Skitarii dual-wielding swords is going to care much about that. He just wants to stab. Lastly, pretty much every Mechanicus unit has either a 5 or 6 plus invulnerable save. Because of this, they can take a pretty surprising amount of fire before crumbling, though there's a flip side of this that you can probably guess at I'll get to later. But first, the lore cons. There's 2 possibilities for the Mechanicus regarding their collection of technology, both of which suck for different reasons. One is that they're genuinely losing more and more tech as time goes by and are fighting a losing battle to desperately keep mankind from going full caveman. The other is that they're hoarding all the best stuff and allowing everyone but themselves to go full caveman. If the former, then even the people in the Imperium with the best shot of fixing this mess can't do anything about it. If the latter, then the entire organization is filled with selfish assholes that can't comprehend the idea of sharing something even if it would help everyone in the long run. Well, yes, there are instances where the Mechanicus is legitimately in the right for hoarding away dangerous or unstable equipment. Just as frequently, they keep stuff for no other reason than to give themselves an advantage over the rest of the Imperium. Also, I said that the tech priests are diverse and wants and needs up to a point. I'm going to describe a tech priest character to you, see if you can guess who it is. It thinks that mankind is primitive compared to what it once was and that the Imperium's tech is woefully inadequate. It will do whatever it needs to in order to acquire lost technology. It worships machines, and it's generally very robotic in nature even when it does feel emotions. Can you name the tech priest I'm talking about? Probably, because I just described all of them. I just want a single tech priest that breaks this mold just a little bit. Because I fear I might not be clear enough on what I want, let me just be as blatant as possible. I want Rudolf von Stroheim, the tech priest. Come on, tell me that wouldn't be a sight to see. Imagine some guardsmen and Tau are on a planet fighting over the latest sphere expansion. Things are tense, and the Tau are poised to take over with their advanced weaponry and whatnot. All of a sudden, some Mechanicus adept comes flying onto the battlefield from orbit, screaming about how Imperial science is the finest in the galaxy, before he starts hip thrusting at the enemy and a bolter embedded in his chest rips the Tau to pieces. Tell me that wouldn't be the best goddamn thing to happen to the Mechanicus. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem very likely to happen, because aside from little quirks or views on things like AI each tech priest may have, their overarching goals and ideologies are pretty much carbon copies of one another. They're also rarely the protagonists of a story. This has changed more and more lately, such as with games like Mechanicus or Call Reviving Guilliman, but a tech priest is generally relegated to the supporting cast. So as much as the cyborg monks are kick-ass, they don't often get the spotlight in the setting. Even with Call, his shining accomplishments have been working on a project alongside Guilliman or bringing the blueberry bastard back to life. On a similar note, the Mechanicus might not be in charge of technology, like even remotely. Remember that dragon I said the Emperor locked away in Mars? Yeah, it's a Catan, or at least a big shard of one, the Void Dragon specifically, the one who controls machines, located on the capital planet of the faction that is obsessed with machines and lost technology. If that theory is true, and it is still really just a theory, and he gets out and is angry at the Mechanicus, they can kiss all their fancy equipment goodbye. In fact, he might be the machine god / Omnisci in disguise. The lore on this isn't 100% certain, just to be totally in the clear, but it's a distinct possibility given that the Necrons have launched suicide attacks on Mars in the past to get at something under the planet. Also on the topic of the machine god, god, as well as other things like machine spirits, it might not exist. There's been pretty much no lore on it doing anything, unlike any other godlike being in the setting. Even the Tau have that greater good spirit thing kicking around, but the machine god hasn't done jack shit. The same thing goes for the vagueness the Mechanicus has with the machine spirits and whether or not they're actually AI fragments, or straight up just spirits. On the one hand, this does create room for some really interesting debate and interpretations of the lore. Something like the machine god actually being some unbelievably powerful AI computer out there that would make Votan look pathetic. On the other hand, if you like having some actual clear-cut answers for your lore, then you won't get any here. And it also raises the possibility that the Mechanicus are the only faction in 40k who are entirely incorrect in their spiritual beliefs, which would be lame as hell. Also, if their god is actually just a Necron god, that would make them Warhammer 40k's equivalent of Bretonnia, and I would have a fucking stroke. What else do I have? I'm probably just nitpicking at this point. Oh yeah, I kinda wish that there'd be more of an emphasis on human-looking Mechanicus adepts. Theoretically, you could get your augmentations to be damn near indistinguishable from normal human features. And tech priests generally don't start off their careers completely covered in metal tentacles. But all we ever really see in lore are ones at the end of the process where they're more machine than man. It'd be really interesting to see a follower of the machine god at the other end of the spectrum, at the start of their career as a tech priest. The holy human form is something that 40k mankind is obsessed with, but the cogboys wipe their ass with that notion, evidently. Alright, tabletop cons, what have we got here? First off, all of that flexibility and potential buffs that they have comes with a downside in that the Mechanicus is complicated as shit to play. Fitting, all things told, given that they're machine people, but still very complicated nonetheless. You will have to keep track of an absolute mountain of keywords, buffs, and unit statistics to make the most out of this army. It kind of reminds me of the Eldar, except instead of getting punished for misplacing a unit, you get punished because you didn't memorize an entire AP US history exam's worth of rules. Be sure to look at the rules thoroughly for this army, because you might just straight up not know that you can do something or miss out on a buff if you don't. Those canticles and doctrinas being a once per game use also limits their effectiveness. Beyond the obvious drawback of you can only do each of them once, you need to make sure you time it right. Otherwise you might find out that you could have absolutely clowned on your opponent if you just waited a turn or used them a turn earlier, and now you're caught with your pants down. You don't need to use either of them on any given turn, but that can still give you the problem of missing a major opportunity that you'll never get again. Giving the remaining Scutari of a unit +1 to their armor save doesn't really do much when there's only 2 of them left standing. Speaking of saves, remember how they all have an invulnerable one? This is because with few exceptions, this army has absolutely no staying power apart from that save. Scutari, for instance, are all toughness 3, so that invulnerable save isn't something that makes them broken. It's what they need to not get gunned down by every weapon in the game stronger than a las gun. Similarly, their leadership is bad. Morale is actually something you need to worry about with the Mechanicus, especially given their low toughness. And if you don't have the CP or right units to buff this problem away, you might find your battle line disintegrating after just a few hits. You might say that the Imperial Guard or other armies also have this problem, and to be fair, that's true, but the Guard are a true Horde army aside from their tanks. The Mechanicus can field an appreciable amount of models on the battlefield, but not enough like a proper Horde army where you can lose 20 models in a single turn and be able to confidently say that this doesn't affect your game plan in the slightest. Now this one is a big one: no Psychers or Psychic Defense. The only real option you have is if you use Forge World Graia's rule set for your army, and that requires both a command point spent and rolling above a 4 to nullify the psychic power. Otherwise, you have 2 options. You need to take allied Imperium Psyker models, or you just need to try and kill any Psychers before they can cast anything crucial. And depending on who you're up against, that may or may not be possible. Magnus isn't just gonna lay down and let you table him on turn 2. This is related to 2 other problems. First one being, if you take allies, you don't get things like you don't get any canicles. Even if you take Knights of the Cog, which are Imperial Knights allowed to benefit from Mechanicus buffs, you don't get canicles, which is a damn shame because they're very helpful. The second, and much worse problem, is that the Mechanicus struggle with causing mortal wounds. Now on many units, if you roll a 6, you're gonna cause mortal wounds for days. But let me ask you, do you really want to rely on rolling a 6 to carry the day for you? That is asking to be let down. I don't care how many command points you blow on rerolls, how many dice you roll. If you rely on rolling a 6, you aren't getting one. Second to last problem with the Mechanicus is one that's as predictable as the sun rising in the morning, and that's the problem of money. Well, if you double down on Castellans and other vehicles and transports, they won't be the worst. If you want a varied and or competitive army, then you'll be shelling out some cash. The last problem is entirely to do with their models. Could you do me a favor and look at Call again for a moment? Tell me where to even begin to start painting this abomination. No, you know what? Where do I even start assembling him? If your heart's set on collecting and playing the Mechanicus, I'd say that the biggest downside more than anything in their rules is you're going to be assembling and painting so many fiddly bits and tiny details. It's just God, even if the assembling isn't that bad, painting basic Skitarii alone is a nightmare. You've got your nice flat robe to paint, and then congratulations, have fun differentiating 50 different varieties of tube. Someone really needs to tell Games Workshop designers that when creating a model, sometimes less is more. So there's the Mechanicus basics for you. If you enjoy fornicating with electrical sockets and being a greedy hoarder, there's no better army for you. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the archaeotech to my Mechanicus, filling me with wonder and awe at the power of the ancients. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there. I need to continually remind myself that Among Us was not a thing before the Castellans were designed. Games Workshop did not rip off Among Us. There's no such thing as an imposter Castellan robot. They are most certainly not in my walls.